Welcome to the Gyrl Podcast. I'm Gyrl Mitchell-Lewis, and thank you all for joining. Hope you all are having a wonderful week. Hope everything is going well. I hope the weather is starting to get warmer for you. I mean, it's definitely spring now, but winter is still trying to hang on. So keep getting these moments of 1 week, definitely here in the South, 1 week it's really warm, and then we have some spells of cold weather, but hey, it's all coming. So I don't really complain, because when the heat gets here and summer happens, or spring quickly turns to summer, I would say, here in the South. So hope everything is going good for you all, and I hope you're having a great week. All right, so as we close out Women's History Month, I'm really excited to chat with life coach, Reiki, and IET practitioner, podcaster, and founder of Cherish and Bloom Coaching, Kim Keane. Kim helps women heal old wounds and release past painful experiences so they can love themselves unconditionally, make themselves the priority, and understand how to move forward without all the sacrifices. It's definitely going to be a good conversation, so stay tuned. I'll be right back with Kim. Welcome back to the Gyrl Podcast. I'm Gyrl. Thank you all for joining. All right, I'm excited. We're welcoming in Kim to the Gyrl Podcast. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get started by having you tell the audience listening and watching who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Kim Keane, and I am a multi-modality healer and also a life coach and a fellow podcaster. So I help women overcome their trauma from their past so that they can reclaim their power and really strive to leave a legacy that was better left than was better left for them.
Awesome. I love that. Well, let's go ahead and start our chat. And the first question I want to ask you is, what do you think stops women from fully stepping into the purpose sorry.
That's okay.
What stops them from stepping into their purpose?
Yeah, I think there are actually probably really a lot of things that really can stop us and hold us back. And I think the first thing is fear of what other people are going to think. Mm-hmm. We get so stuck on the opinion of others, and we're so afraid of someone saying something to us. Oh, that's not right. Why would you do that? Why would you say that? Why would you think that? And just that fear alone makes us say, nope, not stepping forward, not shining my light, not letting people see me for who I am. And I think that can go back to a lot of things. I think it can go back to childhood. We might have had an experience at school or with peers where we've been bullied for wearing maybe the outfit that we felt so good and like we were hot to trot. And then kids at school can be mean and nasty and be like, ew, why would you wear that? We might have also had the parent who said, why would you do that? Why would you say that? That's ridiculous. Or even maybe a teacher at school or another adult in our life. But then we have social media today, which while there are so many positives about social media, there are so many things about social media that really are not great for us. And it allows us to get stuck in that thing of seeing someone's highlight reel, that just that quick snippet. And then we think like, oh, they said it better. Their house looks better. Their outfit is better. They seem like they're doing a better job of parenting their kids or being a partner to their spouse or, whatever. And so we get into that dialogue where we pull all of these pieces of what I call evidence to support the fact that we can actually step into our purpose. We can actually be seen for what we're here and meant to be doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So when you talked about being, young and being in school, and you said, you wore an outfit, and it just triggered something for me that recently I actually had a conversation with my mom about. So I don't know what age, I don't know how old I was, but I do know it was at a moment where Converse, which are very popular today.
Yes, love Converse.
Right. And actually were very popular, like maybe the year after I wore them to school. Like my parents had gotten me like two, like this bright orange pair, and then I had a blue pair. And I was a little like, I don't know about these. But then my dad was like, these are new shoes, you're gonna wear them. And so I remember going to school and wearing those and like getting like bullied all day about those shoes. And I remember coming home and just like crying and telling my parents, I was like, please don't make me wear those shoes ever again. Because like all day people just said that I had on cheap shoes and like, you know, where'd you get those? And I mean, like, you know, there's trauma there for, you know, that, you know, can stick with you until you have a conversation about it. Obviously, I've had several conversations about it being an adult, but I just thought about that. And then a year later, everybody was wearing those same shoes. And nobody was getting, you know, bullied about that. But I think, you know, to your point, it is really important for us to be able to dig back into those moments of and heal from them.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that when we do dig back into those moments, it's not to actually re-traumatize ourselves and really experience that pain all over again, but it's more about getting the lesson from that experience. And so that's where healing work is really great. So like, as you were saying, like, oh my gosh, you know, you just brought that up. I wanted to be like, oh my God, let's tap around that. And so, because when you do that, that can actually help reduce the emotional intensity around that, because we don't want to re-trigger and re-traumatize ourselves because it was awful going through it the first time. So we don't ever want to go through it again. But we do need to, I'll say, tap back into the emotion of it so that we can say, oh my gosh, that's it. Let me work on that. Let me get the lesson from that. So then I can put that to the side and move forward in a more empowered way.
Because I know I always think about like, if I had been the version of me that I am today, that I would have been like, whatever, like these shoes are like awesome. I don't care what you think. But instead, I mean, you know, you're young, you're a child. And it's like, even the people who are your friends are the ones that are like ganging up to say things. So, so I think that is really important. Also, another thing that I know that, often holds us back is our own limiting beliefs.
Yes.
I know it's a very complex question to ask, but what are some ways that you help women that you work with to sort of like let go of some of the limiting beliefs that they have?
Yeah. So it is a complex question, but I think it goes back to those experiences. So really figuring out where they developed those limiting beliefs and noticing how they created patterns around that. So like if we use your experience of being bullied around the shoes, then you stopped wearing the things that you felt comfortable in. And you started maybe going with things that were more muted or more like boring or plain, so that you could just blend into the background and sort of be invisible. So when we can see like, okay, I'm running this pattern of people pleasing, or I'm running this pattern of feeling like not enough, it's really important to get to the root cause of those things so you can see where that pattern, or, you know, developed from, and really looking, because there are emotional needs. And so I didn't create these emotional needs. Tony Robbins and a psychiatrist that he worked with, they created them. And I know there's some controversy around Tony Robbins, but then the emotional needs are really the most important piece. So aside from where they were developed from, but we have these emotional needs, and there are 6 of them, and there are 4 that are primary needs, and they're certainty, uncertainty, love and connection, which go together, and then significance. And then there are 2 other needs, and those are, I'll say, growth and contribution. They're more of fulfillment needs. And so those 4 primary needs, will do whatever it takes to get those needs met. And so we run patterns with limiting beliefs to, usually it's when the, you know what hits the fan, it's that we overvalue significance, or we're overvaluing certainty. Another word for certainty is safety. Another word is comfort. And so, or security. And so when we have these limiting beliefs, what we do is we run these patterns to typically meet those 2 needs of significance and certainty. And so when we can get to the root cause of those things, like, oh my gosh, I was running that pattern because I was wanting to feel significant, or I was wanting to feel that certainty, but I was sacrificing my ability to grow and contribute. Then you can start reworking those limiting beliefs and asking yourself, oh my gosh, is it 100% true that? No, it's not. So then you can start working through that, because you can see that there's outdated evidence there. So you have to replace that outdated evidence with new evidence that's more supportive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. So, yeah, I mean, but I think there were quite a few things that you mentioned that really stand out, and you see it all the time as a woman talking to other women. You see these things like this need to people please, just like you said, the sort of like fading into the background and being invisible, or not really sort of putting your best, like letting your light shine, right? Letting other people dim your light because you don't want to cause. And I think with a lot of women, it's like, I don't want to cause friction.
Yes.
And you see that a lot, like obviously in the workplace, right? Well, I don't want to be too, I know I hear, well, I don't want to be too aggressive because I don't want them to, call me that word. And I'm like, I mean, so that means you are not going to put your best foot forward, and show people. And I only say this because I, went through a time in my career, as I like grew up in corporate, I would say, that there were very particular boxes that they wanted women to fit in. And if you were deemed like, oh, you could be leader, whatever, then it was still like this box. It looked like a certain thing. Whereas like now I'm really excited. I'm really happy, like being a leader in my at my job like that. I don't have to fit in a particular box. I mean, the way my style works, my style is appreciated. And, I'm like, well, I know that this works. So I'm not looking for a validation from someone else to like, tell me like, oh yeah, you're doing a great job. It's like, I'm working with my team. And as long as they're getting what they need, then I know that the, work that I'm doing is like, it matters and it's helping them.
Yeah. I think too, we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, because we're told that if we show up a certain way or if we say certain things, it's going to make someone feel uncomfortable. So you don't want them to feel bad because you're showing up this way. Maybe you should just wait and let other people talk first, and then you can share your thoughts. So that way, you know what I mean? So, because I had a professor say that to me in college, and I know she said it with the best of intentions. But I was, older than most of the kids in college. I didn't go to college right out of high school, but I was also showing up in this place. Like I felt like I had to prove myself because I didn't go to college right out of high school. I had been in an abusive relationship for 5.5 years, all of these things. And then, in one of our like evaluation sessions, looking over a paper, she was like, you don't always have to be the first one to raise your hand and speak. You should try to let 3 other people speak before you, because some of the kids are intimidated by you. And I was like mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, I intimidated someone. That was never my intention. But now I'm like, screw that. I will raise my hand and speak first every time. And that's their problem if they don't like it. So if they're intimidated by that, they have their own work to do.
Yeah, I think
voice, use it.
Exactly. Yes. And oh my gosh, I can't imagine like, I just can't even imagine like being in a class and a professor telling you that like, you don't always have to speak first. I mean, like who does that? I just understand that. And like you said, I mean, part of for women is that, I mean, I know we always say like, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, but I think you can't say it enough because there's still a lot of moments now where like I watch a lot of people, younger women on my team who won't be the first to say something. It'll just be, it won't be on a Zoom and it'll just be like quiet when I'm like, oh, okay, well, who thinks, what do you all think? And then it's just people sitting. And then there's usually like a male that comes off and says something first. And I'm like, no, like no, there's no response. That's the wrong response. And that's what I always try to tell people. I'm like, when someone says, especially when women say it and are like, oh, well, I mean, this is probably a dumb question. No. Nothing that provides you the information that you need to like get further on what you're working on or a project is a bad question to ask. Like, not ever. And I just, definitely try to encourage the women on my team to like, feel confident sharing. And it's okay to be first.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it goes back to, it's interesting because you're like, a male will be the first one to speak up when it's just quiet and crickets. But I think there's, that's another dynamic to it is that, there's the feminine energy and the masculine energy. And if women, and it's not about being a man or a woman, it's about being feminine energy, which is like, waiting to be rescued by the knight in shining armor, having the more passive approach. And then the masculine energy is the fixer energy, the rescuer energy. And so, he was totally tapping into his masculine energy because he was like, oh, none of the women are answering. Let me come in and save the day. And I'll share something to get the conversation started. Yeah. And all the women are like, oh, well, I can't, I can't say it. I have to wait for someone to say it for me, because if I say it, then I'm going to look like I'm coming across too strong. So there's a whole nother dynamic there that plays into the way that women show up, is that we've been told, and I am not hating on princess movies because I love a good, Disney princess movie. And I have no problem with them, but it's kind of how we've been programmed. There are so many, and not just Disney princess movies, but there are so many things in society and culture that program starting as little girls to say, you can't show up first. You have to let the male energy show up first and save you. Because if you don't, then you're coming across rude, inconsiderate, bossy, entitled. So you just sit back and wait until someone gives you permission.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that is definitely so true. And it's like, a couple jobs back, I will say there used to always be this guy that would always he'd be chomping at the bit to speak. Like, I mean, and he, most times what he would say made like absolute zero sense. It was always wrong, just had no value to it. But because he would run to say something, and then people would be like, oh, yeah, like all the other men in the room. Meanwhile, all the women are looking like, what in the world?
Right.
What is this foolishness? Yeah. So I definitely think like even being in that type of environment, just sort of like, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go for mine. And the other thing too, is like, not only, being unafraid to speak first, but also holding your space when you are speaking. Because when I worked at that company, it was very much a male dominated company. And you could be talking and then somebody could just start talking at the same time as you. And I just got to a place and I was like, excuse me, would it be good if I completed the statement before you started to talk? Oh, I'm so sorry, Gyrl. And I was just like, yeah, because that's rude. And I remember having a side conversation with this person. I said, look, my intent, I don't want to embarrass you in front of everyone, but if you do that again, I'm going to embarrass you in front of everyone.
Yes, because you're being rude and trying to make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about, or what you have to say is more valuable than what I have to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so instead of allowing everybody to have that space, and giving them the opportunity to speak and letting them finish. And then you can either disagree or agree, but just valuing people enough to allow them to hold the space and share. Because it does take courage to share, it's not always easy to speak up and say what's on your mind, especially in a group setting like that, because it goes back to those limiting beliefs. It goes back to us feeling like we can't show up with purpose. And so when we finally do get the courage to do it, and then someone squashes it, you're like, that's it. I'm never doing that again. That was horrible. That was awful. One and done. Good.
Yes.
I'll just wait until everyone else is done talking, and then I'll say what I need to say if it still feels relevant, instead of setting the stage and starting the conversation.
Yes, I love that you said that, because that is so true. You get an instant shutdown. It's like a person's never going to say anything anymore. But then, I think there's also the flip side of these types of scenarios where being comfortable with maybe not having something to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of places, spaces make people feel like if you're not saying anything, then you're not adding value.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because I know for, only my examples, everyone, because that's all I know. Right. But like, I can remember being younger in the corporate world and, just like, I'm already very observant. So I like to listen to people before I speak. I'm not trying to like talk at the same time, letting you because I want to make sure I understand like what someone is saying. And I remember like I did have a manager who was like, well, you probably want to always like add something in the meetings. I mean, maybe like somebody else says something, then like you can always like say something similar to what they said, but just change it up. I was like, and I remember looking at her and going, I don't think so. I was like, why would I need to do that? Like, we have enough people in our building, like repeating what somebody else said and just changing up a couple of words, but it's still being what the person just said. And so I just sort of took from that, like, no, if this is the way I have to succeed, then I guess I'm not going to succeed, because I think that's very rude. And it's okay if you don't have anything to say in that moment, because I know a lot of times, like I may have come back after a meeting and said, you know what, Ashley, I had a little bit more time to think about that. And they do have a follow up for you. And I think like there's something very important about people knowing that like you don't have to like word vomit just to feel like you're adding value.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think, recognizing that you did have that after you had time to marinate on it and process, then you could have just popped an email out and said, hey, everybody, popped into my mind after I had time to think about it, but being okay with shooting out that email and not worrying about like, oh my gosh, I'm going to look so ridiculous. This meeting was 5 hours ago. And now I'm sending this email and they're going to think, oh my gosh, what, you just now thought of this. But I think also too, it's finding value. So not everybody, their strength is verbal communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is not your strength, don't force yourself to do that, because then it is going to feel awkward and uncomfortable. And maybe you aren't going to look like you know what you're talking about, or it's going to look like you don't really want to be there or participating, when that's really not the case. So then it's saying, okay, then what is my area of strength? How can I contribute in a way that feels meaningful for me, that feels aligned with my values, my principles, my strengths, and being confident with showing up with that, because not everybody has to be a strong verbal communicator. There are so many other ways to add value, and owning that and having the courage to say, now you've had time to reflect. But if there's ever a situation where someone pulls you aside and says, well, you could just rephrase something, having the courage to say, actually, I would feel much more aligned with supporting others in this way. That's my area of expertise, or that's my strength. And so that I feel like would give the most value rather than me just paraphrasing what someone else said.
Yes.
And I think that shows strength and awareness and confidence more than just paraphrasing something just to verbally spit something out because you were told you had to.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. How do we as women release that need for external validation?
Yeah. So it's really super important that we start learning how to validate ourselves. And that's where the emotional needs come back. Because when I was in the thick of the struggle after leaving my teaching career and trying to reparent myself, going to therapy and waiting for the therapist to tell me like, oh, you're just having an identity crisis because you left your teaching career. No problem. 3 easy ways to fix that. And that was so not the case. But I had gotten so stuck in my teaching career, in college, in my relationship with my partners, with my family, waiting for someone to say like, oh my God, Kim, you're amazing. And the example that comes to mind is I ran a 5K. And then like a couple months later, I ran a 10K. And then a week later, I ran another 10K. And I shaved 1 minute and 30 seconds off that second 10K a week later. And I said that to someone, they're like, well, how'd you do that? And I was waiting for them to be like, oh my God, that is amazing. You shaved 1 minute and 30 seconds off of a 10K 1 week later. And because I didn't get that, I stopped running.
No.
Yes, I did. I did. And looking back, I'm like, oh, that was so foolish. but I was waiting so desperately for someone to give me that external validation. And so the long story short of it is I had to start looking at how I was looking for that external validation with my emotional needs. How was I looking for significance? How was I looking for certainty? How was I looking for uncertainty? How was I looking for connection and love? And start giving it to myself. And so it was like, at the end of the day, writing in my gratitude journal, 3 things that I was grateful for, and taking that one step further, having one celebration for myself. And maybe it was that I just put my sneakers on that day and I actually got out of the house and didn't lay around my pajamas all day. Like it can be something that's small as a win, but looking at all the things that we really are good at and start celebrating ourselves for it and let go of that external validation, because that is never guaranteed. The only thing that is guaranteed is me, myself, and I. Like, that is the only thing that is guaranteed to you as a constant is yourself. So when we get hung up on looking for that validation from employers, coworkers, family, friends, partner, spouse, kids, it's going to leave us depleted, because we might get it once, we might get it twice, but it will never be a constant. So when we can start tapping in and looking how to celebrate ourselves and validating ourselves. And there are times where, I'm like, oh, Kim, you shouldn't have said that. But then I had to flip it and be like, no, good job, Kim, because you actually spoke up. You actually shared what was on your mind, even though it felt uncomfortable to do it. And so that is a win. And so the other ways that you can really validate yourself is start like reconnecting with yourself. You can do that through meditation. You can do that through breath work. You can do that through yoga. Because when you're on that yoga mat, that it's just you in your own space. You can let go of what's going on around you. And that was really how I started to actually really reconnect with myself, so that I had this space to validate myself, was yoga and meditation.
First of all, I really love that you said what was so important is that you have me, myself, and I. Because I think it is important for us to call that to attention, because we as people with needs, I mean, we are going to want validation from other people who may not be able to give it to us. Like it may be that those people, they may, like you said, they may give it to you one time, but then you just sort of never know what other people are experiencing. And so if you put all your trust into oh, well, my manager is going to tell me that I'm doing a great job, this week, or that I did really good. But, your manager is also has projects, has things, has a life, has all these things. And it may not be top of mind that I have to pour into this person in this way. Now, I will say, for me as a manager who is conscious of the needs of my team members, I do make a really strong point to affirm where there are certain team members that I know, no, this person needs to hear me say when we do check-ins that they are doing a really awesome job. I can't just assume, I can't assume that this is that she's gonna, just know that I know that. So I think there, like you said, there may be levels in the people who are, who we may seek validation from, but then also giving grace to people who just may not be, because not everyone is conscious, right, in a place to where they can say, oh, this person needs this. And especially too, I find in relationships with a partner or a spouse, I mean, I think that is definitely, because I struggle and still have moments. So I said it right, struggle with my husband, where I would think oh, well, I mean, you should be validating me in this moment because I did something that was pretty awesome. Yeah. And, and then he may not say it, but then maybe 3 weeks later, oh yeah, when you did that thing, that was really cool. I'm just really proud of you. I'm that was 3 weeks ago, man.
I know. You're I moved on already. But I think that's another piece, is that sometimes we look for validation and they're not going to validate us in the way that we need to be validated, or they think they are. They think that "atta girl" is what we were looking for, but it wasn't at all. And so the other piece of the puzzle is that there are love languages. And so communicating with others what your love language is. So mine is quality time with this subset of quality talk. If you talk to me, you have just filled my cup. But my husband, he does not like to talk. So when he actually, so he has to make a conscious effort to talk. His love language is physical touch. And as a mom, I'm like, I have kids hanging on me. I have animals in my room. The last thing I want to do is for you to touch me. Like, please, like, sure, you can hold my hand, but don't touch me. Like, you sit on your side of the couch, I sit on my side. We can watch TV, all is well. But I have to stay. I have to remember, because I'm like, quality talk is not his love language. So when I'm like a million miles an hour at him, he's probably like, oh my God, be quiet. Can't you just like snuggle with me? And I'm like, why aren't you talking? I don't want you touching me. So when you can recognize what your love language is. So I had to start spending quality time with myself. I love getting my nails done. So I had to start making an effort, treating myself to getting a mani and a pedi every week. His, you know, his is different. He's very physical. So for him, it's going to the gym and working out. That's how he connects with himself and validates himself. Now, my younger daughter, her love language is gifts. Give that girl a gift and she is yours and butter in your, like melting butter in your hands. You know, my 13-year-old, hers is words of affirmation. Tell her she's amazing. And she's like, you know, basking in it. So just recognizing too what your love language is so that you can communicate that to someone else.
Yes.
So that way they're aware of it and then they are validating you in a way that feels right, but also so you can validate your own self in a way that feels right. So if yours is gifts, treat yourself, you know, maybe not all the time, but maybe it's just even treating yourself to a Starbucks cake pop. I mean, who knows? It's just something small to validate yourself.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you brought up love languages, because just recently, probably like a month ago, because we had taken it a while, we had taken it about like 2 years ago. But then my pastor at my church was talking about it in one of the February sermons. And I was like, you know what, let's just revisit this, because I think that we need to make sure that we understand and know. But so my top one is words of affirmation. And then like my second one is acts of service. And it actually switched because it used to be it used to be quality time, but then it switched. So then like with my husband, physical touch is like his number one. Physical touch is like, physical touch is like the last one for me, because, but then it felt like it changed a lot, like just over the last 3 years of like, you know, I went from working in the office to being at home. And then I felt like I had more of that time, you know, quality time, like in the house and being around him and my pup and being together. And so for me, I just kind of got to play still words affirmation, just like your daughter, like, tell me I'm amazing. I'm the best, you know, whatever. I'm like, but that acts of service just became really important, because I'm like, no, it's about like the action behind the words. Like, do what you said you were going to do. If you said you're going to do this, like, I need you to do it. Like, can you go outside and fix such and such? Yes, please fix that. And then I'm like falling all over myself. But the thing that I actually thought about in the actual message that he was giving is that what occurred to me is that I'm like, you know what? I want him to honor mine. Well, I need to make sure I'm honoring his. And even though like the last thing I want to do is just be like somebody like all on my arm and like, you know, like whatever, like you said, I still have to like make more efforts to just in moments of like, oh, sitting on the couch, watching TV, like, oh, because like my dog, he was like, the dog gets more cuddle time than me. And I was like, I mean, a dog. He's like, hello, have you seen him?
He's adorable.
So it's just, you know, like you said, not only being able to communicate yours, but then also being able to honor theirs as well.
Yeah. So, and also too, it goes back to validating yourself, because when you validated yourself, then you actually have the space and the energy to be validated by someone else, but also to reciprocate that. So it doesn't feel one-sided.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. So how do we know what's actually within our control? Also complex question.
You actually would think, Kyra, that it's a complex question, but it's really actually not when you just break it down like this. So there are only 4 things in our control. And that's what I say, what I think, what I feel, what I do. That is it. That's the only thing that's within my control 100% of the time. I cannot control what anyone else says, what anyone else thinks, what they feel, what they say, what they do. Like, I can't control any of that. I can only control my own actions, thoughts, feelings. And so anything else is under my influence.
Yeah.
And so once I learned that, and I help other women see that, it's just such a huge game changer, because I think we try to control so many things that are outside of our actual control. And then that leads to frustration. It leads to anger and anxiety and stress, but it also leads to feelings of not being enough. It causes low self-esteem. It leads to feelings of not being heard and seen. And we think, like, what is wrong with me? Why won't people listen to me? Why won't they do what I want them to do? Well, because you can't make them. You can influence them, but you can't force them. So when you just focus on the 4 things that you can control, huge game changer.
That is true. It is very much a game changer when you get to that place.
Because it allows you to release so much.
Yeah. Because if not, I mean, you just can't. Like, you can't control those other factors. And I do love the fact that you mentioned influence, because yes, you can influence, but you can't control.
Yeah. And I mean, with influence, I think there's a fine balance between influence and manipulation. And I think sometimes when we feel like we are out of control or we're not able to control something, then that's when manipulation starts taking place. We manipulate others because we feel so out of control and we're looking for those 4 primary needs. But then it also allows us to be easily manipulated because we want that validation from others and we want that semblance of control. So it also leaves us open and vulnerable for being manipulated. So I think once you really fully own just exactly the things that you can control, it allows you to put up, I'll say, healthier boundaries and stronger boundaries. So then that manipulation isn't able to penetrate your field as easily, but also you can recognize healthier ways to influence others to get you the things that you might want or need, or the actions that you feel need to be taken.
Awesome. Well, Kim, can you tell us about the programs you offer and how people can work with you?
Yeah, sure. So I offer one-on-one life coaching, and I also have right now a crystal workshop. It's getting revamped a little bit. But then I also offer EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. That's tapping, which I mentioned earlier. It's basically like acupuncture without the needles, using pressure points on your face and your hands and your upper body to help with reduce emotional intensity around limiting beliefs, fears, negative experiences, anxiety, stress. And then also I'm a Reiki practitioner, so I can offer Reiki healing as well, either in person or virtually.
Awesome. And where can they connect to you?
So I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I am also, Facebook business page, and I'm happy with anyone reaches out on my Facebook personal page. But Instagram, I'm also there often. Those are probably the 2 easiest ways to get in touch. And then also I have my website, which is kimkeane.com.
Awesome. And we'll drop all the links in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, we've got 2 more little segments.
Sure.
Up next is 3 things with Kim. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Yes, 1 is a 2-parter. So
okay.
We'll start with how do you start and end the day?
Okay. So I start the day with a morning routine. So I meditate, and then I do a card pull for myself using an oracle card or a tarot card deck. And then I also read a devotional book called Journey to the Heart. It has one, like a daily devotional, and I've used it for years. And then I also write down affirmations, 6 of them in an affirmation journal. And then I write 3 things that I'm grateful for. And then to end the day, it's like a couple of things. Sometimes I'll do a card pull to see what the lesson of the day was. Sometimes I'll write in my gratitude journal something that made my heart happy, or that surprised me, or that inspired me. And that's usually it. So, or sometimes if I feel like I really need to decompress, I'll either Reiki myself or I'll do a round of tapping for myself.
Awesome. Question number 2, what's one goal or intention that you've set for yourself this year?
Oh, so it's ironic because it's what we started talking about at the beginning of the podcast episode is actually to be more visible and to actually shine my light more instead of retreating to the background.
Awesome. I love that. And the last question is, what do you do on a day off?
Oh gosh. So I'm a mom to 2 girls. So we're usually running around getting things together for dance class or soccer practice or piano recitals. Or I just like to just read a book and veg out for a bit. Sometimes we'll take a day trip to someplace local like Philadelphia, or if the weather's nice, head down to the beach in Delaware. But really, I'm just kind of like low key, jeans and a t-shirt kind of girl.
I like it. All right. And then the last thing, before you leave us, what are 3 things you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
Yeah. So knowing that you have a right to show up as you are with no questions asked, to give yourself permission to do it because no one else is going to give you that permission. And 3, to know that you are worthy and you are loved unconditionally, no matter what, no questions asked.
Awesome. Love those. Well, thank you, Kim. I have really enjoyed our chat today. I wish you all the success, and you always can come back here and share more with us in the future.
Oh, thank you. And same to you.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Gyrl Podcast. I'm Kyra. Thanks again to Kim for joining the show today. If you want to learn more about her and her services, check out the links in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about Glow Up Gyrl, visit us at glowupgirl.com. There you can check out past podcast episodes. You can sign up to be a guest on the show, grab our social links, and so much more. Be sure to check out our Career Focus podcast as well. That is where I share my personal journey relating to my career. And I give some tips that can help you as you journey in your career. So if you're listening also on a platform where you can leave a review, please feel free to do so. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel and you'd love to see my guests on screen, go over there and check us out at Glow Up Gyrl. As always, thank you all for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. So until then, stay focused, fab, and glow up. Take care, everyone.